Did you know the 1980s oozed out more ghostly chillers than any other decade, yet only a handful, think Poltergeist, ever get the spotlight? Over 24 supernatural features from that neon-soaked era scored festival awards or cult followings before vanishing from video store shelves forever. Tonight, we're unearthing 15 forgotten phantasm flicks that once rattled VHS players and now beg for a glorious rewatch. So slam that like button, subscribe, and let's blow the cobwebs off these ectoplasmic treasures. The Changeling, 1980. The decade's most elegantly mounted ghost story didn't come from Hollywood at all. It arrived from chilly Vancouver by way of Hungarian-born director Peter Medak. Grief-stricken composer John Russell retreats to a Victorian mansion where a dusty child's wheelchair and a music box that plays his own melody ignite a séance of sorrow. That infamous wheelchair sequence, filmed with nothing but fishing wire and shadowy lighting, remains nightmare fuel decades later. Behind the camera, producer Garth Drabinsky gambled Canadian tax shelter money on Globe-class production design, then watched the film sweep 8 inaugural Genie Awards, including Best Picture, making it Canada's first worldwide horror hit. Yet box office buzz faded once The Shining hogged U.S. screens, and The Changeling was left rattling chains on late-night cable. Why revisit? Because Medak's slow-burn pacing feels radical in today's jump-scare market. Themes of political corruption, an adopted heir literally murdering a disabled child for inheritance, still sting, and the soundtrack's lonely piano predated modern elevated horror minimalism by 40 years. For 80s audiences scarred by divorce, recession, and urban decay, the film's message was clear. Your safe new house may carry ghosts of crimes past. Rewatch now, and you'll hear DNA echoes in everything from The Orphanage to Hereditary. Ghost Story, 1981. Imagine 4 Hollywood legends, Fred Astaire, Melvin Douglas, Douglas Fairbanks Jr., and John Houseman, trading top hats for tombstones. That casting coup, wrangled by British director John Irvin, turned Peter Straub's best-selling novel into a wintry meditation on guilt. On location in Saratoga Springs, New York, Astaire confessed to Irvin that he felt he might die or be murdered on set, a fear that eerily mirrors the film's plot of old men haunted by the woman they wronged. While critics praised its atmosphere, Universal Pictures trimmed character beats to squeeze in more shocks, leaving audiences disoriented and ticket sales lukewarm. Today, that truncated cut feels like an art house curio, as if the Big Chill spent the night in a crypt. The impact on the era? Ghost Story whispered that prestige actors could headline horror without trashing their reputations, paving a path for Bette Davis and Gregory Peck. Revisit, and you'll find icy cinematography, a chilling score by Philippe Sard, and Alice Krige serving vengeance colder than New England snow. The Hearse, 1980. Released weeks after Friday the 13th, George Bowers's The Hearse drove straight past multiplexes, yet its premise is devilishly simple. A schoolteacher inherits her late aunt's Gothic manse, only to be stalked by a driverless funeral coach. Crown International Pictures spent a modest $2.8 million and still landed prime summer slots in New York City, banking on poster art alone. Why did it stall? Audiences wanted splatter. Bowers delivered atmosphere, moonlit roads, viola-heavy score, and a heroin gaslit by conservatively dressed townsfolk. But the VHS boom turned slow-burn thrillers into sleepover staples, and The Hearse gained midnight movie mileage, especially among teens craving PG-rated frights that felt unsafe. Its legacy on that generation shows in how countless 80s kids still shudder when an empty vehicle's headlights flick on in the dark. Fire it up today and note how the film's feminist undertone, small-town patriarchy burying women's autonomy, prefigures 21st century gaslight horror. The Nesting, 1981. Shot in Irvington, New York under the working title Phobia, this haunted brothel shocker came from unlikely author Armand Weston, better known for 70s adult cinema. Distributors rechristened it The Nesting to cash in on The Shining's domestic dread, ironically ignoring the protagonist's agoraphobia, the very nesting affliction Weston wanted to explore. The novelist Lauren Cochrane rents a Victorian mansion once home to sex workers murdered by soldiers in 1941. Ghostly madams seduce, soldier spirits strangle, and staircases collapse like bad memories. The film's biggest technical feat is its swirling Steadicam work, impossible on Weston's minuscule budget, yet capturing PTSD vertigo years before Jacob's Ladder. For Reagan-era viewers navigating post-Vietnam trauma and second-wave feminist backlash, The Nesting resonated. History's violence against women returns until confronted head-on. Critical ridicule sent it to bargain bins, but the home video generation championed its avant-garde lens flares and jazzy score. Today, boutique labels sell 4K restorations, reclaiming Weston as a volatile visionary whose lone mainstream outing deserves a guilt-free revisit. Lady in White, 1988. Few ghost tales blend childhood wonder and serial killer dread like writer-director-composer Frank LaLoggia's Lady in White. Financed via a penny stock company LaLoggia formed with his cousin, a unique DIY model that raised $4.7 million from 4,000 small investors. It shot for nostalgia-soaked Americana in Lyons, New York. Set on Halloween 1962, the film traps young Frankie in a school cloakroom where he sees the specter of a murdered girl and the faceless man who killed her. That blend of gentle Spielbergian awe and hard R danger confused distributors. The picture limped to $1.7 million against its budget, then disappeared. Yet for countless Gen X kids who discovered it on cable, Lucas Haas's wide-eyed terror became a rite of passage, and its anti-racism subplot, an innocent black janitor scapegoated, mirrored the decade's racial tensions. Rewatching today reveals lush cinematography by future Oscar winner Russell Carpenter and a bittersweet score that rivals E.T. for emotional punch. Streaming audiences now praise its message. Childhood innocence survives only when communities face their ghosts, literal and historical, together. Ghostkeeper, 1981. Set high in the snow-packed Canadian Rockies, Ghostkeeper begins like a slasher and ends like a campfire folktale. On New Year's Eve, 3 friends abandon their snowmobiles and break into an abandoned luxury hotel, its chandeliers iced over and corridors knee-deep in powder. The lone resident, a frail innkeeper who whispers about feeding the house, hides something ancient in the boiler room. Director James Makachuk shot with a 6-person crew in a real blizzard, stretching a tiny tax shelter budget by sleeping cast and crew in the same frozen lodge they filmed in. The plot taps the indigenous Wendigo legend: betray your friends in winter, and the spirit eats your soul. Makachuk rewrote scenes nightly, filming whatever weather allowed, so the story drifts like a fever dream. Local papers praised the authentic Rockies backdrop, even as urban critics called it too quiet. That quiet, though, was gold for VHS kids in the mid-'80s who were tired of screeching synth stings. Ghostkeeper felt like the wind itself was telling the story. Generation X remembered the image of the elderly woman pouring tea while a whiteout raged outside. Suddenly, Grandma's cottage didn't feel safe. Modern slow-burn chillers, The Blackcoat's Daughter, 30 Days of Night, owe a debt to this modest Canadian creeper, proof that raw weather can freeze an audience deeper than any jump scare. The House Where Evil Dwells, 1982. Director Kevin Connor shipped the classic haunted house setup across the Pacific and soaked it in Japanese folklore. A violent 1840 samurai love triangle ends in blood and suicide. A century later, an American diplomat moves his family into the moss-covered villa, unaware the lovers' spirits still duel behind shoji screens. Shot entirely on location in Kyoto's Sagano bamboo forest, the U.S.-Japan co-production cost $4 million and employed kabuki actors as spectral doubles, lending the ghosts a sinuous, dancer-like grace. Practical tricks, floating sake bowls filmed on reverse wire pulls, terrified early audiences, yet American critics mocked its East meets West tone, sinking box office hopes. Ironically, Japanese late-night TV embraced the Gaijin in Peril tale, spawning a short-run manga adaptation now prized by collectors. For Western viewers riding the 1980s wave of Walkmans, sushi bars, and Nintendo consoles, the film mirrored unease about cultural cross-pollination. Move in too casually, it warns, and the past will slice you open. Military families stationed abroad passed VHS copies around barracks. Many 80s kids still shudder at the possessed crab scuttling across tatami mats. Rewatch today and savor widescreen vistas of crooked Jizo statues and moonlit bamboo, real Kyoto landmarks rarely filmed since. The final freeze frame, a chrysanthemum turning black, delivers a poetic gut punch modern J-horror still imitates. The Supernaturals, 1986. Long before elevated horror was a buzzword, director Armand Mastroianni fused war trauma with ghost mythology. A National Guard squad's war games disturbed the mass grave of Confederate prisoners forced across a minefield in 1865. Filmed on abandoned Army land in Georgia, the picture pairs future Star Trek icons LeVar Burton and Nichelle Nichols, though marketing somehow forgot to brag. Embassy Pictures slashed the budget mid-shoot, so the effects team improvised phosphorescent face paint and glow in the dark contacts that make the revenants seem carved from swamp gas. Cinematographer Stephen Poster bathed night scenes in tracer green mist, turning limitations into eerie style. The movie hit only 86 U.S. screens before fleeing to VHS, where teen renters shelved it beside Vietnam dramas like Platoon. For mid-'80s audiences wrestling with PTSD headlines and MIAs, its message rang clear. The unfinished sins of war will hunt the next generation. School counselors even used bootleg copies to spark talks on survivors' guilt. Today, The Supernaturals reads like a bridge between Jacob's Ladder and Overlord. Claymore mines detonate in reverse, rifles twist toward their owners, and Nichols delivers a thunderous monologue on accountability that feels painfully current. Its box office failure nudged Burton back to TV safety and left Mastroianni to small screen work, another reason to salute this flawed, ambitious gem. Pulse, 1988. Most hauntings live in attics. Pulse torments the electrical grid. Writer-director Paul Golding stages a suburban divorce story where the real custody battle is between people and their appliances. Young David visits Dad's new tract house just as a rogue current, shot as writhing green energy racing through copper, begins scalding showers and weaponizing garbage disposals. NASA engineers consulted so every short circuit obeyed plausible voltage limits. Special effects wizard Kevin Pike exploded 200 thrift store microwaves to perfect sparking door hinges. Released by Columbia into late summer doldrums, the film grossed a meek $2.5 million, but cable networks adored its PG-13 thrills, looping it between Poltergeist 3 and War Games. A generation of latchkey kids suddenly yanked plugs at night, reinforcing technophobia already stoked by Chernobyl fallout and smog alerts. Stylistically, it foreshadowed 90s cyber horror. Crude CG tendrils anticipate The Lawnmower Man, and sickly sodium vapor lighting anticipates Saw. The cul-de-sac set reappeared 2 years later in Edward Scissorhands, proving the same suburb could house both pastel dreams and electronic nightmares. Revisit Pulse and hear the 1980s warning that smart homes, then called automatic, might love us to death. Prison, 1987. Before Die Hard 2 made him a household name, Finnish director Rennie Harlin turned a condemned Wyoming penitentiary into a supernatural slaughterhouse. The opening 1960 execution of innocent Charlie Forsyth, filmed in the institution's real gas chamber, sets off decades-long vengeance. When the disused block reopens, the now warden who threw the switch must face barbed wire that coils like vipers and steel bars that twist like taffy. Shot for $1.3 million, the production let Harlan torch real cells and drill holes in concrete because the state planned to demolish the prison anyway. Future Oscar winner Viggo Mortensen performs his own stunts amid live fire, while makeup legend John Carl Buechler designs Forsyth's glowing vein specter, a look later echoed in Event Horizon. The MPAA's X-rating threat forced 47 seconds of gore cuts and tanked domestic grosses at $354,000, but 110,000 VHS units found eager blue-collar audiences in towns where prisons provided local jobs. For Reagan-era viewers bombarded with tough-on-crime rhetoric, seeing the system itself punished felt cathartic. Behind the scenes, producer Irwin Yablans was so impressed he hired Harlan for A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and composer Richard Band's Mournful Choir inspired early Nine Inch Nails demos. Blu-ray restorations now reinstate The Carnage, showing how this scrappy ghost yarn forged the big-budget bravado that defined 90s action cinema. Witchboard, 1986. Back when Slumber Party Rental was a marketing strategy, writer-director Kevin Tenney turned a $2 million pocket change budget into the first theatrical feature built entirely around a modern Ouija board. The plot feels ripped from a campfire dare. Carefree, Linda asks the board for lottery numbers and instead unchains a Victorian child spirit who may be a lying longshoreman with a hatchet. Production shot in 8 weeks around Venice Beach, where Tenney's crew blew half the budget on Steadicam rentals so the Planchette's Ghost Cam could roam hallways like an invisible toddler on roller skates. At test screenings, the talking board got bigger cheers than the actors, so distributor International Film Marketing ran TV spots that showed nothing but the Planchette spelling DIE. That campaign worked. Witchboard earned $7.3 million worldwide, triple its cost, and kicked off a brief 1987 toy store boom in glow-in-the-dark spirit boards before Hasbro sued the knockoffs. Gen X renters loved it for another reason. It legitimized co-ed sleepovers. Parents assumed the R rating was for satanic imagery. Teens knew it was mostly witty bickering between a jealous boyfriend and Linda's sassy medium friend, played by Kathleen Wilhoit. Guitar god George Buck Flower cameoed as an ex-con plumber because Tenney promised to let him write a blues track for the end credits. Flower recorded Graveyard Blues in one take at 3 a.m., and the scratch vocal made the final print, one of the cheapest soundtrack deals of the decade. For impact, Witchboard proved you could wring suspense from a prop anyone could buy at Kmart, paving the way for Jumanji, Stay Alive, and the Ouija franchise. Rewatch today, and you'll spot embryonic performances from stunt coordinator turned actor James W. Quinn, who later designed kills for Final Destination. Ironic, since our next title practically wrote that playbook. The Boogeyman, 1980. Berlin-born maverick Uli Lommel shot this mirror shard revenge saga on a shoestring $300,000, partly financed by selling his own Warhol canvases. The gimmick, a brother and sister smash a haunted-looking glass. Every sliver now floats through the air, slicing throats and possessing kitchen knives. Lommel filmed in his in-laws' Long Island farmhouse, pouring red-dyed Caro syrup onto real hardwood floors because the stain looked pretty, a choice that cost him his deposit but gave the kills a sticky authenticity. Released by the notorious Jerry Gross organization, the movie surfed the post-Halloween wave to a staggering $35 million global haul, a 100-to-1 return few Wall Street analysts enjoy. UK censors slapped it onto the Video Nasty list, ensuring instant cult status. Lommel counter-programmed the ban by touring U.S. college towns with a traveling mirror maze lobby display where fans could sign shards and take them home in velvet bags. Countless dorm walls across 1981 had a reflective splinter taped beside the theatrical one-sheet, a piece of guerrilla marketing that prefigured today's take a souvenir pop-up horror events. Generational impact? The film hammered home that low-budget ingenuity could spawn franchisable IP. Its success bankrolled Lommel's later art house horrors and convinced distributors to gamble on other European imports, like Demons and City of the Living Dead. Modern viewers accustomed to slick digital ghosts may laugh at the fishing line-controlled glass, but the homespun trickery feels oddly fresh in an era of CGI overload. Watch for the closing freeze frame. A glint in a baby's eye hints the curse never ends. A trope sinister and it follows would echo decades later. Sole Survivor, 1984. Before Final Destination turned death into an algorithm, writer-director Tom Eberhardt envisioned fate as a pack of hollow-eyed strangers hustling through Los Angeles traffic. Radio exec Denise jumps a red-eye flight. Everyone else dies in a fireball, leaving her the miracle survivor the media adore. Eberhardt, fresh out of USC Film School, maxed credit cards for 2-perforation film stock, letting cinematographer Russell Carpenter shoot economy widescreen. To populate the crash site, he bought 40 charred mannequins from a fire marshal training yard for $50 each, bribing the yard manager with Dodgers tickets. Critics dismissed the movie as too sad for horror, but that melancholy struck a chord with Reagan-era audiences bombarded by airline terror headlines. Campus counselors screened it during survivor guilt workshops. Vietnam vets reportedly found the shambling, almost dead extras reflected their own nightmares. Cult growth accelerated when late-night TNT placed it in a Women in Peril marathon. Viewers noticed Denise actively fights her cosmic stalkers rather than fainting into male arms. Fun fact, a guerrilla subplot features a pre-night of the Comet cameo from Catherine Mary Stewart, linking Eberhardt's 2 cult gems into what fans jokingly call the Cometverse. Why revisit? Beyond its proto-Final Destination premise, Sole Survivor invites discussion of media exploitation. Every time Denise switches on the TV, news stations re-air crash footage with her name superimposed. That tension between public fascination and private trauma feels ripped from today's viral video outrage cycles. With Carpenter's neon taillights and David F. Anthony's heartbeat score, now remastered in 4K, the film finally looks as sharp as its fatalistic script always felt. One Dark Night, 1983. If John Hughes ever rewrote a EC Comics tale, it might look like Tom McLaughlin's Mausoleum Shocker. New girl Julie must spend a night inside LA's Crypt Cathedral Tower Mausoleum to join the high school clique, the Sisters. Trouble is, the marble corridors hold psychic corpse collector Raymar, loosely based on Russian telekinesis researcher Ninel Kulagina, a fact McLaughlin discovered in a National Enquirer clipping taped above his typewriter. Production wrangled permits at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, but the real building closed at dusk, forcing cast and crew to shoot from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m., then nap in hearses to make call time. McLaughlin's wife, stuntwoman Nancy McLaughlin, rigged levitating corpse effects using hidden leaf blowers and fishing poles, producing a ghastly puppet waltz that had Fangoria readers dubbing it the gooey Disney-haunted mansion. Distribution hell ensued. Producer Edward Montoro vanished with the negatives during his own court case, delaying release until 1983. By then, star Adam West was pushing Batman reruns at conventions and became the accidental marketing draw. The movie earned modest box office but exploded on HBO, where latchkey kids memorized its purple lightning climax. Sociologically, it mirrors 1980s teen initiation anxiety, proving once again that peer pressure rarely ends well, and its female-centric cast gave rare Scream Queen agency years before The Craft. McLaughlin used leftover electrokinesis sound FX when he directed Friday the 13th Part 6, so Jason's Resurrection and much of modern horror's Thunderzap echoes Raymar's Mausoleum Meltdown. With Kino Lorber's Blu-ray restoration, you can finally spot the Easter egg graffiti. Tina Loves Freddy, a pre-meta wink to Wes Craven's glove-handed Ghoul. Ghost Town, 1988. Empire Pictures was bankrupt and auctioning off film cans when director Richard Governor sneaked this 6-week Western horror shoot onto an Arizona backlot. The premise slaps. Modern Deputy Langley chases a kidnapped woman through a dust storm portal and lands in Sundown, a desert town where every outlaw died in 1882, but still slings lead for a demon gunslinger named Devlin. Because Empire could no longer afford day players, Governor stuffed locals into century-old cavalry coats and paid them with lunch vouchers, giving the Phantoms an authentically weather-beaten look. Special effects legend David Allen built animatronic tumbleweeds that howl like banshees, while composer Harvey Bernhard fused Morricone whistles with Carpenter-esque synth, an oddball mashup that Tarantino later cited as scratch-track inspiration for Django Unchained. Theatrical release evaporated when Empire collapsed, so Ghost Town limped to video stores in a plain white clamshell whose only artwork was a sheriff badge sticker. Yet it found unexpected fans among truck stop renters and Dungeons & Dragons players who adored the gunslinger lich villain. Generational impact arrived via cable superstation TBS, which packaged it in a Saturday cowboy sci-fi block that reran monthly until 1993. Ask any elder millennial. The image of Devlin clawing his way out of a coffin, 6 shooters still blazing, was the reason they pulled the blanket over their head at sleepovers. Modern rewatch value? Aside from seeing future Twin Peaks alum Catherine Hickland wield a ghost-banishing shotgun, Ghost Town hints at what could have been, a shared universe where spectral outlaws haunted every frontier fort. With Vinegar Syndrome's 2K scan finally letting sagebrush colors pop, the film closes our list by reminding us that forgotten doesn't mean lifeless. Sometimes it's just waiting in the dust for someone brave enough to ride in. And there you have it. 15 80s ghost tales rattling chains just outside the Netflix algorithm, itching for a fresh set of mortal eyes. If even one of these spectral sleepers haunted your memories tonight, smash that like button, share the chills with a friend, and drop your own forgotten favorite down in the comments. Until next time, keep the flashlight handy. Because on this channel, the past is never really dead. Did you know that a single handful of Hong Kong kung fu films in the 1970s sparked dojo revolutions from Los Angeles backstreets to Parisian rooftops? These 15 gritty classics didn't just rack up millions at the box office. They rewrote the rules of fight choreography and planted the first seeds of a global martial arts movement. But before we unleash those roundhouse kicks, smash that like button and ring the bell, because you won't want to miss a single jaw-dropping moment. Magnificent Ruffians, 1979. At the tail end of the 70s kung fu boom, Magnificent Ruffians arrived like a late-night street brawl, raw, unpolished, and unforgettable. Set against the backdrop of waning Empire intrigue, this Shaw Brothers underdog turned heads with its ragtag team of drifters who train in the outlaw brotherhood to avenge a fallen master. While not a Bruce Lee headline, it revolutionized group fight staging, 5 against 5, choreographed in tight corridors with whirling kicks and flying elbows. The film's breakthrough came when stunt coordinator Sammo Hung, already a rising name, imposed bruising realism, cutting no corners on bone-shattering impacts and sweat-slicked faces. Hung's on-screen cameo as the scarred brawler lent the movie its star power, as he and co-lead Carter Wong reportedly rehearsed martial arts katas for weeks under blistering heat, blood blisters and all. Their climactic tavern showdown still influences ensemble fight scenes in Hollywood blockbusters today. Culturally, Magnificent Ruffians resounded in San Francisco's Chinatown clubs, where karate students mimicked its improvised weapons, from beer bottles to wooden stools. It triggered underground fight club circuits, inspiring a subculture that blurred cinema and reality. Shaolin Wooden Men, 1976. Emerging in the mid-decade, Shaolin Wooden Men stands as a testament to discipline over spectacle. Unlike the bombastic brawls of its peers, this film isolates its hero in the claustrophobic chambers of the Shaolin Temple, where mechanical wooden dummies await to crush the unworthy. Shot in shadowy corridors, the movie's stark lighting and deliberate pacing built suspense one strike at a time. Its breakthrough came from restoration of traditional Shaolin rituals. Monks in full orange robes co-choreographed every blow, lending authenticity that Western audiences had never seen. Lead actor Chan Shen trained for 6 months in actual temple grounds, learning to anticipate the wood dummy's spinning arms, a stunt so dangerous that the crew built emergency brakes behind the scenes. The film's star power soared when Shaw Brothers billed it as the ultimate test of human will, drawing in crowds frustrated by flashy gimmicks. Its austere fight breakdown, no wires, no wireframes, became a touchstone for purists and influenced David Carradine's later approach on Kung Fu, the TV series. On San Diego's early martial arts conventions, instructors showcased the Wooden Man style as a separate discipline, spawning dojo side courses that persist to this day. Hand of Death, 1976. In the murky world of 1976's Hand of Death, revenge wears a toxic glove. This Shaw Brothers gem opens with a venom-soaked assassin dispatching a martial arts clan, setting the stage for a deadly counterstrike. The film's groundbreaking moment was its introduction of biochemical peril, blade-hidden poison, and biohazard lore, instead of the usual kicking and clawing. Audiences gasped at gore-free, yet bone-deep thrills. Co-directed by martial arts legend John Woo, under his pre-hero name, this picture catapulted David Chiang into leading man territory. Chiang's real-life training in deflecting edged weapons informed every parry, giving fight scenes an intimacy that lingered long after the credits. Sound designers layered metal-on-metal clangs with whispered hisses to accentuate the poison theme. In Tokyo's underground fight clubs, imitators began sparring with latex-coated knuckles, calling it the Hand of Death drill, a trend that briefly flooded dojo supply shops with poison replica gloves. Iron-Fisted Monk, 1977. Breaking from the revenge epic mold, Iron-Fisted Monk arrived in '77 as a spiritual journey masked in martial arts glory. Loosely inspired by the legendary monk Wong Fei Hung, it balances introspection with fist-to-face violence, an early kung fu hybrid that predicted the art house boom. Its breakthrough moment came when director Lau Kar-lung, a master of Hungar style, insisted on filming on location in remote Buddhist temples. Lead star Gordon Liu lived among real monks, immersing himself in meditation and herbal diets. The result? Fight scenes that feel like religious rites, each staff strike echoing centuries of discipline. Critics hailed Liu's performance as the embodiment of physical devotion, and Western press began describing him as Kung Fu's Gandhi. The iconic final duel, shot at dawn with sunbeams through temple arches, remains a blueprint for cinematic spirituality. Across Europe's burgeoning martial arts festivals, Iron-Fisted Monk screenings became accompanied by live Chai Jump demonstrations, fusing film and festival culture. Shaolin Mantis, 1978. By 1978, martial arts cinema craved innovation. Enter Shaolin Mantis, the first film to translate insect-inspired kung fu to the screen. With choreography mimicking mantis claws and angular footwork, it feels like watching a deadly ballet in a bamboo grove. Its breakthrough lay in scientific study. Choreographer Tao Li compiled hours of insect documentaries to craft moves that snapped and pried like real mantis limbs. Lead actor Brian Lung spent weeks in entomology labs practicing mantis reflex drills. His fingers curled just like the predators he emulated. Although not a box office titan, Shaolin Mantis garnered cult status in Australia and Brazil, where people abandoned boxing gloves for sharpened mantis claw attachments at street fight gatherings. The Big Boss, 1971. When The Big Boss exploded onto Hong Kong screens in 1971, it shattered a decade of kung fu tropes and crowned Bruce Lee as cinema's first true martial arts powerhouse. Set against the drab interiors of an ice processing plant near the Thailand border, the film mirrored real labor migrant tensions, giving audiences both grit and glory. Lee's breakthrough came from his unscripted intensity, a flurry of fists so rapid the camera struggled to keep up, redefining on-screen speed. His almost silent hero, Chung Chao-an, transforms from mild rice factory worker into lethal avenger when his cousins fall victim to a drug ring boss. Lee's relentless training regimen, up to 1,000 push-ups daily, translated on-screen to bone-crunching authenticity. The crescendo in the frozen warehouse pits Lee against a squad of thugs in tight quarters. Low-angle shots emphasize his power, while quick cuts highlight every snap knee and elbow strike, creating a visceral punch-clock rhythm still studied by choreographers today. The Big Boss sold over 1 million tickets in its first 2 weeks in Hong Kong and sparked anti-drug trafficking PSA campaigns across Asia's cinemas. Martial arts schools from Manila to Los Angeles advertised Chung Chowan-style classes. Fist of Fury, 1972. In 1972, Fist of Fury picked up where The Big Boss left off, only this time Bruce Lee's Chung Jin avenges his master in an incendiary nationalistic firestorm. Released amid real Sino-Japanese tensions, the film portrayed Lee's lone warrior demolishing oppression with brutal precision. Lee's Nunchaku massacre scene shocked global censors, making Fist of Fury the first HK film to feature extended weapons combat, leading to worldwide bans on nunchaku in theaters. Lee's ripped forearms, veins pulsing, became a symbol of defiance. He insisted on filming the school courtyard massacre in one continuous take, no cuts, so the emotional weight never dissipated. The climactic temple duel uses deep focus lenses, letting every bead of sweat and flicker of anger read in perfect clarity. The sound design blends traditional gong hits with feral grunts, immersing viewers in each strike. Japanese distributors pulled the film, but bootleg prints soared through Southeast Asia. Karate studios in California renamed their Shotokan classes Chung's Fury in tribute. Enter the Dragon, 1973. Enter the Dragon wasn't just Bruce Lee's Hollywood debut, it was the film that catapulted Kung Fu into every living room on Earth. Co-produced by Warner Brothers and Shaw Brothers, its $850,000 budget ballooned to $25 million in box office receipts, shattering color film records in 64 countries. The climactic mirror room sequence introduced kaleidoscopic fight choreography, 7 camera persons capturing Lee slicing through reflections, an effect so iconic that it's endlessly homaged in modern blockbusters. Lee's magnetic charisma shone opposite John Saxon and Jim Kelly. Off-camera, Lee rewrote scripts to infuse his Jeet Kune Do philosophy, insisting the camera never masked a fakery in fights. From the deadly hall of mirrors to the tunnel fight finale, each movement is a masterclass. Slow-motion kicks punctuate high-speed strikes, while Lee's fluid footwork foretells MMA's later rise. After release, martial arts class enrollment in North America soared by 400%. Disco Kung Fu fusion clubs opened in London, and MTV-era music videos later borrowed its lightning edits. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin, 1978. By 1978, martial arts cinema craved philosophical depth. The 36th Chamber of Shaolin delivered with monk-in-training San Te, Gordon Liu, conquering 6 punishing chambers to earn true warrior status and invent a secret 36th chamber to train laypeople. Lau Kar Lung fused rigorous Hungar forms with narrative discipline, staging each chamber's trial as a short film of its own. The 36-step footstool routine became a rite of passage in dojos worldwide. Gordon Liu, a diminutive performer, sold every strike with uncanny precision. He lived as a Shaolin disciple for 3 months, no modern comforts, which shows in his raw, bone-deep performances. The final chamber's bamboo pole sparring is a ballet of gravitational shifts. Poles launch and crash, while Liu's subtle feints preempt every blow. Cultural ripple. In New York's Chinatown, young enthusiasts formed Shaolin clubs, staging midnight drills replicating each chamber's trial, an underground phenomenon chronicled in early martial arts zines. Drunken Master, 1978. Drunken Master reinvented kung fu comedy by pairing acrobatic slapstick with hidden strength philosophy. Jackie Chan's breakout role as Wong Fei-hung's mischievous student who only masters martial arts by embracing intoxicated flow was both hilarious and breathtakingly athletic. Chan choreographed the Drunken Eight style, blending breaks, spins, and deceptive stumbling, each move timed to the clang of bottle shards. This fusion of humor and high-risk stunts birthed an entirely new subgenre. Chan performed 95% of his own stunts, suffering bruised ribs and a cracked collarbone, because he believed the slightest body double trace would betray the "for ears, not eyes" ethos. The final barroom brawl is a perpetual motion machine. Overhead shots capture Chan sliding under tables, flicking chairs, and firing porcelain teapots with ninja-like precision. The soundscape erupts with shattering glass and Chan's own guttural yelps. After its Hong Kong release, Drunken Master inspired drunken boxing classes in Los Angeles and London, complete with barstool sparring nights that melded fitness and festivity. 5 Deadly Venoms, 1978. Shaw Brothers. 5 Deadly Venoms gathered the legendary Venom mob in a high-stakes hunt for a missing martial arts manual, each assassin wielding an animal-inspired style. Filmed at the peak of Hong Kong's studio era, it fused archetypal characters, centipede, snake, scorpion, lizard, and toad, into one narrative tapestry, a breakthrough that made ensemble kung fu a global phenomenon. Stunt legends Sun Chien and Lo Meng trained under real-life masters of animal forms, drilling every claw parry and whip kick until bruises ran like battle scars. The film's signature fortress siege, with each venom revealed in shadow and torchlight, set a new standard for suspense in fight cinema. Audiences from São Paulo to Stockholm organized Venom Nights, reenacting the betrayals and duels in underground circuits. Venom masks sold out in Chinatown night markets. Snake in the Eagle's Shadow, 1978. Before Drunken Master made Jackie Chan a superstar, Snake in the Eagle's Shadow introduced us to his flawless blend of comedy and combat. This film revived an almost lost Snake style as a bullied orphan learns to mimic the serpent's fluid strikes under a retired master. Chan choreographed every flourish himself, slithering low sweeps, blistering finger jabs, during a grueling 3-month regimen that saw him spar barefoot on crushed glass to build toughness. The pivotal tavern ambush, shot in one take, showcased his emerging gift for turning everyday props, teapots, lanterns, into deadly extensions of his body. In Chicago and Birmingham, martial arts schools renamed beginner classes Snake Fundamentals, citing Chan's sneaky footwork drills as foundational. Way of the Dragon, 1972. Bruce Lee's directorial debut, Way of the Dragon, took him from Hong Kong to Rome, pitting East versus West in a quest to protect a family dojo besieged by mob muscle. Lee wrote, directed, and starred, an unprecedented trifecta that shattered studio norms and bankrolled his creative freedom. The film's breakthrough is the Colosseum duel, where Lee pulverizes Italian stuntman Bob Wall with naked fist precision. Lee's insistence on minimal cuts meant the camera caught every beat of sweat and micro-shift in weight, an authentic fight rhythm that remains the gold standard. Pop culture ripple, karate studios from Stockholm to Sydney renamed their advanced striking course, the Dragon Method, advertising "Learn it from Lee's spirit." King Boxer, 5 Fingers of Death, 1972. Released as 5 Fingers of Death in the U.S., King Boxer became the first Hong Kong film to top America's box office, proof that kung fu could conquer Hollywood. Its tale of a humble disciple rising to avenge his master struck a chord amid the Vietnam War's fading echoes, blending honor with explosive combat. Lead actor Jimmy Wang Yu, already a star, choreographed fight scenes in cramped bamboo groves, innovating angled camera techniques that amplified impact. The iconic 1-inch punch debut here predated Lee's version, shocking audiences with a single blow that sent foes flying. After its stateside success, American martial arts schools boomed by 300%, and King Boxer Nights became staple events at drive-in theaters coast to coast. Game of Death, 1978. Bruce Lee's Game of Death stands as both his final film project and an unfinished masterpiece. Designed around a 5-level pagoda, each floor hosted a different fighting style, Lee versus boxing icon Chuck Norris in the penultimate battle. Although Lee died before completion, director Robert Clouse wove Lee's original footage with doubles to honor his vision of transcendent combat. The film's breakthrough lies in the pagoda concept, each floor a psychological crucible, from barefoot karate to nunchaku fury, laying groundwork for modern level-based fight narratives in video games and films. After its posthumous release, Game of Death became a mythic blueprint. Martial arts tournaments internationally staged pagoda challenges where competitors advanced ring by ring. Ever feel like you've marched through every foxhole Hollywood ever dug? Think again, cine soldiers, because these 15 forgotten 60s war epics are locked, loaded, and ready to blast your movie night into cinematic legend. Strap in, prime those comment triggers, and let's ride. The Train, 1964. What's more valuable in wartime, human lives or humanity's culture? That's the electrifying question powering John Frankenheimer's diesel-scented thriller, where Burt Lancaster's flinty French railman risks everything to keep a locomotive packed with priceless art from disappearing into the Reich. Frankenheimer, who seized the director's chair after Arthur Penn's slower approach derailed, insisted on shooting in authentic rail yards across eastern France. He even detonated full-size engines on live track, turning the budget's hefty $6+ million into screaming metal confetti. Lancaster, 49 and famously stubborn, refused stunt doubles, sprinting to stop moving wagons and pulling off a knee-buckling fall that left producers clutching insurance forms. Maurice Jarre's pounding percussion score fuses with the hiss of steam to etch every chase into your memory, while black and white cinematography paints soot-flecked clouds like war-torn frescoes. Though critics cheered its kinetic realism, the film's modest box office crawl, roughly $7 million, meant it was eclipsed by jumbo Technicolor spectacles of the era. All the better for us treasure hunters. Revisiting The Train today is like stumbling across a forgotten Monet in a dusty attic. 633 Squadron, 1964. Buckle those harnesses, flyboys, because this Royal Air Force barn burner serves up barrel rolls and bravery in equal measure. Cliff Robertson headlines as the stoic American leading an Anglo-Norwegian Mosquito squadron on a suicide run through a fjord so narrow the propellers practically shave pine needles. Director Walter Grauman rejected model miniatures, opting instead to fly 5 real decommissioned Mosquitoes, each lovingly refurbished, in screaming formation across Scotland's rugged Loch Morar. The low-altitude passes were so hair-raising that one pilot clipped a treetop, landing minutes from catastrophe and giving us authentic smoke, trailing the wing. The production's economical $1.3 million budget stretched to vivid deluxe color and daring plate process shots that George Lucas later dissected, frame by frame, while designing the rebel assault on the Death Star. Composer Ron Goodwin amps the tempo with brass fanfares that still echo at vintage airshow runways, while a pre-Thunderball Adolfo Celli growls command as the Gestapo villain. Critics praised the breathless aerial photography, yet its box office sortie barely cracked $2 million. Big Hollywood bombers overshadowed these twin-engine terriers. Today, the film's influence strafes everything from Top Gun to flight sim games, and that fjord run remains one of cinema's purest adrenal jolts. Loving the ride so far? Adjust your altitude, because the next target in sight. Castle Keep, 1969. Imagine a mashup of Hemingway, Fellini, and Warhol, all filtered through the snowy fog of the Battle of the Bulge. That's Castle Keep, Sidney Pollack's surrealist fever dream, where Burt Lancaster's one-eyed Major Falconer and his misfit platoon defend a medieval Belgian chateau stuffed with priceless art, wayward countesses, and existential dread. Pollack burned through $8 million in Yugoslavia, constructing full interior sets that could be blown apart with live mortar rounds. He hired novelist William Eastlake to rewrite scenes on set, encouraging actors to improvise philosophical riffs between firefights. Witness Bruce Dern waxing poetic about Volkswagens while shells burst overhead. Temperatures plunged to -10, cameras jammed, and Lancaster warmed his rifle by bonfire before taking it. Box office returns limped home under $2 million, and reviewers expecting a straight combat yarn recoiled at dope-smoked dialogues and pop songs drifting through the snow. Yet that very anachronism birthed the film's cult afterlife. Quentin Tarantino screens it privately to illustrate war as dream state, and modern art historians laud its debate on whether creative beauty can or should survive mechanized slaughter. The climax, a kaleidoscope of stained glass shrapnel and modern tank fire, feels like Rembrandt meeting napalm. Play Dirty, 1969. Sun-bleached cynicism never looked so savage. Michael Caine's Captain Douglas, an oil company stooge drafted into the long-range desert group, finds himself tacked onto a band of convict commandos, each one grinning at the possibility of profit over patriotism. Hungarian-born veteran André de Toth, famed for shooting in an eye patch and snarling at comfort, filmed in Spain's Tabernas Badlands after Israeli locations collapsed under insurance woes. Daily temperatures tore past 45 degrees Celsius. Actors smeared Vaseline on rifles to keep bolts sliding, and extras occasionally collapsed from heat stroke, captured in takes the director gleefully printed. Budget constraints meant recycling German half-tracks from Sergio Leone's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly set next door. Crew members literally raked Sahara tracks smooth each dawn so yesterday's wheel prints wouldn't spoil continuity. The result is a brutal, dusty mission to sabotage a fuel dump that spirals into moral quicksand, capped by one of the bleakest gut-punch endings in war film history. Audiences of '69 weren't ready, and critics yelped, "Too cynical." Today, its flinty anti-heroism prefigures everything from Three Kings to Rogue One. Tobruk, 1967. Rock Hudson swaps matinee charm for grimy subterfuge in Universal's sun-dazed North African spectacular. Playing a British commando who masquerades as Africa Corps to infiltrate Rommel's fuel bunkers, Hudson partners with George Peppard's Jewish-German explosives expert, lightning bottled from their crackling distrust. Director Arthur Hiller shipped an arsenal of period vehicles to the blistering Almeria Desert, where 350 gallons of gasoline fueled pyrotechnics so fierce the Spanish army posted fire brigades on standby. Legendary cinematographer Russell Harlan lensed copper skies that ripple off Hudson's sweat-sheened helmet, while composer Bronislaw Kaper's staccato drums mimic Vickers' gun chatter. Scriptwriter and on-screen sergeant Leo Gordon mined his real World War II Marine experience, peppering dialogue with soldierly gallows humor. With $6 million sunk into production, the film's modest $2 million U.S. gross branded it a disappointment, but international markets and TV syndication kept it simmering until Tarantino name-checked it as Proto-Inglorious Bastards. Watch for Hiller's mirror-rigged Jeep shot, copied decades later in Spielberg's Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Devil's Brigade, 1968. Long before Navy SEALs and Delta Force merch filled suburban closets, Frederick's 1st Special Service Force blended American brawn with Canadian mountain grit to seize Italian peaks deemed impossible. Andrew McLaglen's film salutes that legend, with William Holden's burnout colonel forging Lee Marvin-style misfits into cliff-climbing phantoms. Shot in Utah's Wasatch Range and on Italy's Torbol cliffs, stuntmen dangled from 300-foot sheer faces, while composer Alex North unleashed a brass anthem that climbs just as fiercely. Producers gambled $8 million and scored nearly as much in rentals, yet the film faded behind bigger-budget juggernauts. Its legacy, however, is carved into pop culture. Spielberg swiped the rope slide assault concept for Saving Private Ryan, and modern Canadian Special Forces recruits still screen the movie during training weekends. Keep an ear out for Richard Jekyll's improvised profanity streak. Censors trimmed frames, but the raw audio leaks through like machine gun smoke. Saluting yet? Then hoist that maple leaf and stars and stripes, because this forgotten brotherhood still draws blood, sweat, and cheers in equal measure. The Bridge at Remagen, 1969. War's twilight breeds desperate gambles, and Robert L. Rosen's tense thriller chronicles one of Boba de Weyau's last, seizing the Ludendorff Bridge intact, giving Allied armor a direct artery to Germany's heart. George Siegel's war-weary lieutenant battles both Nazi resistance and his own Brass's timetable, while Robert Vaughn carves tragic nobility into a German major, ordered to blow the span but hoping for peace. United Artists sought authenticity, filming in Czechoslovakia with actual Red Army vehicles repaint-jobbed as Wehrmacht hardware. Mid-shoot, the 1968 Warsaw Pact invasion rolled tanks past their hotel, cast and crew fled across the border, footage cans stashed in laundry baskets. Production costs ballooned beyond $5 million. Box office receipts limped in, but the raw footage captured before evacuation is pure battlefield verite. Dust-plumed half-tracks rattling across a Danube stand-in as civilians peek from broken windows. Elmer Bernstein's elegiac score pulses beneath explosions, foreshadowing Vietnam-era cynicism that critics praised but mainstream audiences dodged. Today, its moral fog, heroism blurred by exhaustion, feels eerily modern. King Rat, 1965. Prisoner of war tales usually preach stoic solidarity, but Brian Forbes's humid masterpiece flips the script, letting George Siegel's hustler thrive in Singapore's Changi camp by bartering anything, including disease-breeding rodents. Shot on a painstaking bamboo village built at California's Columbia Ranch, the film trucked in truckloads of tropical foliage and piped artificial monsoon rain to swamp every frame. Forbes kept extras on starvation rations to sell the gaunt look, while actors smeared glycerin under armpits for perpetual sweat sheen. James Fox's upright British officer offers moral counterweight, but Siegel's silk-smuggling charisma nearly seduces us into complicity. Budgeted at roughly $4 million, the picture recouped costs, yet stayed overshadowed by grander POW spectacles like The Great Escape. Today, critics hail its nuanced take on survival ethics, how war warps class and conscience long before bullets fly. Roger Corman once called it the nastiest, most honest Chawu Tu prison film nobody saw. The Night of the Generals, 1967. Picture a grisly murder mystery spliced into the nerve center of Nazi Europe. Major Grau, Omar Sharif, hunts a high-ranking sadist who butchers prostitutes across Warsaw, Paris, and ultimately the doomed July 20th conspirators. Peter O'Toole dons icy blue contact lenses to play General Tanz, exuding predatory stillness that chills more than any tank battalion. Producer Sam Spiegel poured $5.2 million into lavish locations, real occupation-era boulevards in Warsaw and Paris shut for night shoots, then hired cinematographer Henri Descailles to flood alleys with noir shadows that swallow Tanz's silhouette. Maurice Jarre's waltz theme pirouettes over the carnage, underlining war's dance macabre. Released into a market craving straight battle action, the film confounded ticket buyers, yet its influence creeps everywhere. Look closely, and you'll spot its DNA in C7, and even Inglourious Bastards. The devil, it seems, sometimes wears epaulets instead of horns. Fancy a whodunit where the entire continent is the crime scene? Start interrogating. Battle of Neretva, 1969. When Yugoslavia sets out to top Hollywood, expect artillery. Veljko Bulajic marshaled 10,000 soldiers, 16 tons of TNT, and diplomatic sway to explode a real bridge across the Neretva River, twice because the first take looked too neat. The state-funded budget ballooned beyond $12 million, making it Europe's costliest film at the time. International stars Yul Brynner, Franco Nero, Orson Welles, and Silva Cosina juggled accents beneath fur-lined partisan gear, while Pablo Picasso, yes, the Picasso, painted the movie's poster after a single private screening. Battle scenes unfold like canvas come alive. Snow-dusted ridges roar with Katyusha rockets, horses plunge into ice floes, and villagers form bucket brigades against flamethrowers. The film nabbed an Oscar nomination for Best Foreign Language Film, yet found only art house playdates in the West, leaving its monumental scale largely unseen by mainstream viewers. Modern directors mining crowd war choreography think Jackson's Return of the King, still crib shots from Bulahich's wide-angle carnage. Time to cross that dynamited span and witness Balkan bravery writ colossal. Morituri, Unu Noa Shase Chinch. Spy thriller or existential chamber piece? Why not both? Bernhard Wicki's high seas nail-biter forces pacifist deserter Robert Crane onto a German blockade runner rigged with demolition charges, there to outwit steel-eyed Captain Yul Brynner. Brando leaned into accent uncertainty, claiming Crane's persona was itself camouflage. Brynner countered with chilling precision, allegedly refusing breaks so his gaze never softened. Conrad Hall's desaturated cinematography bathes iron corridors in sweat-slick horror, while Jerry Goldsmith's 12-tone score thrums like sonar in a nightmare. Production cost $6.3 million, and Fox executives prayed for an African Queen-style hit. Instead, Vietnam frustrations kept audiences away, sinking U.S. grosses to half the budget. Yet cinephiles adore its tension mathematics. Silent running nights where whispered footsteps echo louder than depth charges, and a moral finale questioning whether sabotage saves lives or merely shifts guilt. Hell is for Heroes, 1962. 1 year shy of our decade cutoff but spiritually pure 60s grit, Don Siegel's economical bunker drama follows a skeleton squad ordered to fake full company strength against entrenched Nazis. Steve McQueen channels restless menace, subtly racking his Thompson even when dry, foreshadowing his bullet aura. The shoestring budget forced Siegel to set the entire story on a single shell-cratered French road at night. Giant carbon arc lamps mimicked artillery flares, bathing mud in ghostly silver. Bob Newhart, newly famous for phone-riffed comedy, ad-libbed a surreal one-sided call to non-existent headquarters that Siegel kept, citing war's absurd theater. Although box office returns were modest, critics hailed its stripped realism, and later directors, from Oliver Stone to Catherine Bigelow, studied its economical tension. Watching McQueen crawl under barbed wire with cigarettes clenched between teeth reminds you that bravery is sometimes the absence of alternatives. Up for a low-budget masterclass in suspense? Dig in and hold that line. The Thin Red Line, 1964. Long before Terrence Malick's dreamy opus, Andrew Martin served James Jones's Guadalcanal carnage straight, hot, and under $1 million. Keir Dullea headlines as Private Doll, a survival-obsessed everyman whose moral compass spins under artillery shock. Martin shot in Spain's Sierra de Guadarrama, truckloads of palm fronds transforming arid slopes into Pacific jungle. Facing budget crunches, he choreographed assaults with handheld Aeroflex cameras, ducking real detonations to capture authentic soldier POV, techniques later lionized in Vietnam documentaries. Jack Warden's Captain Welsh provides bitter mentorship, his dialogue mined verbatim from Jones's novel after Martin fought studio execs for R-rated language. Critics dismissed it as another foxhole melodrama, yet vets praised its bleary pacing, hours of terror followed by minutes of soul-numbing inactivity. Malick's remake hogs modern spotlight, but this lean forebear crackles with raw immediacy and a final line that will haunt your post-screening silence. The Human Condition. 3. A Soldier's Prayer, 1961. Masaki Kobayashi's 9.5-hour magnum opus concludes with this wintry march of broken souls. Tatsuya Nakadai's pacifist Kaji, imprisoned by both Japanese militarism and Soviet capture, staggers through Manchurian blizzards, shepherding starving comrades while clinging to human decency as his last ration. Kobayashi filmed chronologically over 3 years, letting Nakadai grow out his beard and hollow his eyes for authenticity. Production employed 12,000 extras and entire Siberian-style villages built in Hokkaido. Temperatures plunged so low that camera oil froze, forcing technicians to warm lenses over charcoal braziers. though Japanese rentals eventually recouped the trilogy's 538 million yen total cost. Western distributors balked at subtitles and runtime, relegating screenings to Film Society marathons. The reward for endurance? A searing indictment of imperial cruelty that wields the intimate power of Bergman while unfolding on David Lean's scale. If you believe cinema should challenge as well as entertain, Kaji's Final Prayer may shake your worldview more fiercely than any artillery blast. Is Paris Burning? 1966. René Clément's mosaic of the 1944 liberation is less single narrative, more living fresco, 76 speaking roles, 30-odd locations, and a script punched up by both Gore Vidal and a young Francis Ford Coppola. With the Eiffel Tower awaiting demolition charges, we shadow resistance cells, Wehrmacht holdouts, and allies racing toward the Seine. Clément convinced City Hall to shut Champs-Élysées night traffic, dressing Arc de Triomphe in swastikas so massive they required police cordons to calm outraged citizens. Maurice Jarre mixes church bells with snare drums for a score that rises like dawn over barricades, while Marcel Grignon's monochrome and color photography bathes every cafe window in reflective melancholy. The multinational cast, Belmondo sprinting across rooftops, Kirk Douglas commanding tanks, Simone Signoret forging papers, means every cut sparks fresh star wattage, but critics decried its docudrama sprawl, and box office glory mostly arrived overseas, tallying 37 million worldwide. 15 dust-covered reels, each brimming with battlefield grit, moral thunder, and cinematic bravado, now unearthed for your viewing crusade. Which title stormed your heart? Which forgotten hero deserves a comeback? More timeless treasures are marching your way, so keep the projectors rolling, the popcorn popping, and those spirits unbreakable. Dismissed. Did you know that some of the most mind-bending time machines were never built in labs, but on 1970s backlots? In that single decade, filmmakers poured enough sweat, research, and old-school craft into their sets to fool historians, and even win Oscars with their accuracy. Yet behind every satin waistcoat and flickering street lamp lies a hidden secret. These movies shaped the way later generations imagined the past far more than any textbook ever could. Stick around, smash that like button, and share this ride, because we're counting down 17 jaw-dropping 70s period pieces that resurrected bygone worlds with impossible precision. The Last Picture Show, 1971. Walk into Archer City, Texas, and you'll still feel Peter Bogdanovich's camera lingering on the wind. With a shoestring budget of just $1.3 million, the director commandeered the entire town, repainting shop signs with hand-mixed 1950s pigments, replacing streetlights with pre-fluorescent tungsten bulbs, even borrowing a disused high school gym so extras could slow dance to Hank Williams on scratchy Shellac 78s. Cinematographer Robert Surtees shot on 35mm Orwo B&W stock, rarer, grainier, and closer to 1950s, newspaper halftones than Kodak could offer, so every frame looks like it was yanked from your grandmother's scrapbook. Prop master Walter Scott raided local barns for period license plates, sanding them by hand until the county inspector signed off that they looked legally decrepit. The movie snagged 8 Oscar nominations, with Ben Johnson and Cloris Leachman both winning for roles they almost refused. Johnson thought the language too blue. After release, real teenagers kept pulling up to the town's defunct Royal Theatre, snapping Polaroids under the same marquee where Timothy Bottoms once stared into dusty oblivion. When the Texas Film Commission tried replacing the collapsed roof in 1999, locals rebelled, insisting it remain a ruin, because that's how the movie left it. Few films have embedded themselves so completely into a living community, letting nostalgia and reality merge like a mirage on Route 66. American Graffiti, 1973. George Lucas financed his Hot Rod hymn on a micro-budget of $777,000, but authenticity came priceless. Shooting nights in sleepy Petaluma, California, he wrangled nearly 300 period cars, each vetted by custom paint guru Bob Falfa for factory-correct color codes and chrome trim. Lucas insisted diners serve brand-new cases of 1962 recipe Coca-Cola, then unavailable, so a prop chemist reverse-engineered the pre-high fructose formula. Extras wore thrift store threads, but wardrobe stitched 1950s Union labels inside collars because the director wanted details even the camera can't catch. The soundtrack, 41 wall-to-wall AM hits, cost more than principal photography, yet its seamless DJ banter resurrected the lost art of cruising with transistor radios buzzing in open windows. Every single on the double LP went platinum, and within 6 months, DJs from LA to London launched oldies blocks that birthed a million-dollar nostalgia industry. Universal tested 4 cuts. Lucas's tight 112-minute version, edited with the help of future Pixar founder John Lasseter, outgrossed The Exorcist per theater on opening weekend. The film's box office haul of $140 million made it, dollar for dollar, one of history's most profitable pictures, and convinced studios that period accuracy equals profit, paving the way for every nostalgia-soaked blockbuster that followed. The Sting, 1973. Universal spared no expense recreating 1936 Chicago, even constructing a temporary elevated train spur over the backlot to mimic the cavernous rumble that frames Redford's entrance. Production designer Henry Bumstead scoured WPA blueprints to recreate Union Station's marble ticket hall in fiberglass, so convincing, commuters tried buying real train fare between takes. Edith Head, Scott Joplin's Ragtime, revived through Marvin Hamlish's score, sent sales of sheet music from the 1910s soaring 8,000%. The film's playful long-con structure nabbed 7 Oscars and triggered a national wave of Sting parties where guests arrived in fedoras to play penny ante-poker under replica green-eye shade lamps. Even the felt-edge poker chips used in the climactic showdown became collector's gold. A single set auctioned for $32,000 in 2020, proving the long con's returns never really stopped. The Great Gatsby, 1974. Director Jack Clayton flooded Newport mansions with 1920s opulence, but costume designer Theone V. Aldridge stole the show. She commissioned Italian looms to weave loom shuttle linen whose thread count matched surviving Brooks Brothers catalogs from 1925. Extras attended a week-long Gatsby finishing school, learning to wield long stems and cigarette holders without breaking posture. Tiffany & Company opened its vault, loaning $300,000 in Art Deco diamonds, armed guards on every set call. Cinematographer Douglas Slocum filtered sunlight through silk stockings to mimic period orthochromatic film's blown-out highlights, giving every garden party a halo of champagne sparkle. Ralph Lauren's companion menswear line moved 200,000 pink Oxford shirts in a month and ignited a decade-long preppy craze. While critics debated the film's pacing, it still banked $26 million, triple its budget, and won Aldridge her Oscar, one she famously dedicated to every forgotten seamstress of the 20s. Literary tourism boomed. Long Island realtors reported buyers requesting Gatsby-style docklights, forever blending Fitzgerald's fiction with suburban reality. Chinatown, 1974. Roman Polanski's noir masterpiece began with a simple rule: no modern skyline. Location scouts mapped 360-degree sightlines so no post-1940 architecture would sneak into frame, even draping false facades on distant office blocks. Costume head Anthea Silbert tailored Jack Nicholson's 4-button, wide-lapel suit from a bolt of weighty Glencheck wool identical to 1930s custom-tailored guide specs. Cinematographer John Alonzo slipped antique muslin scrims over the lens to bleach California light into the sepia warmth of a fading postcard. For the pivotal Orange Grove scene, set dressers planted 600 live Valencia trees in a week, trucking in Screenwriter Robert Towne's script, bought for a record $400,000, won the film's lone Oscar, but the real cultural ripple was civic. LA high school curricula added units on the 1930s water wars, crediting the movie with reviving public interest. Chinatown tours that sprang up in the 80s admitted the film's painstakingly reconstructed alleys felt more real than what remained, an irony Towne loved. We rebuilt a city so audiences could mourn what's gone. Barry Lyndon, 1975. Stanley Kubrick didn't just recreate the 1700s, he reverse-engineered it. Warner Brothers bought 3 museum-grade 18th-century estates in Ireland just so Kubrick could knock out walls, rewrote fireplaces, and film long tracking shots without modern blemishes. Every wig uses human hair shipped from a Bavarian monastery that still follows 1760s weaving methods. And then there's the light. Kubrick persuaded NASA to loan him 3 Zeiss f/0.7 lenses, originally built to photograph the far side of the moon, so he could shoot ballroom scenes only by candle glow. Costume chief Milena Canonero stitched uniforms with vegetable dyes that fade naturally under sunlight, meaning red coats look freshly pressed in Act 1 and sweat-stained by Act 3 without makeup retouches. When the film premiered, art historians praised its frames as moving Watteaus. Sales of 18th-century prints doubled at Christie's in 1976, and candle manufacturers reported a sudden boom from cinephiles obsessed with reenacting the glow. The movie snagged 4 Oscars, 3 in craft categories, proving Kubrick's obsession made authenticity the real leading man. Paper Moon, 1973. Peter Bogdanovich shot this Depression-era odyssey on Pan X 5222 stock, the same grain Gordon Willis used for The Godfather. He banned anything invented after 1936 from set, right down to a crew member's wristwatch that halted filming for an hour. Real state fair grounds in Kansas were stripped of aluminum signs and replaced with hand-painted tin placards matching WPA color charts. Ryan O'Neill's Jalopy is a Model A Ford with its pistons bored out to survive 1,000 miles of location hopping. Every squeal you hear is live audio, no Foley. Tatum O'Neill's cigarette packs are factory-sealed 1930s, Lucky Strikes bought at an estate auction. She famously practiced opening them one-handed for 2 weeks. Tatum became the youngest Oscar winner at 10, but the bigger ripple was economic. Antique shops along Route 66 reported a 60% spike in Depression-era memorabilia sales. The American Pickers TV crew still cites the Paper Moon effect for why cast-iron toy prices remained sky-high. The Duelists, 1977. Ridley Scott's featured debut felt like a lost Goya etching come alive. On a budget of $900,000, he rented abandoned Dordogne fortresses, scrubbing moss from 200-year-old stone so cannon smoke would cling for slow-motion shots. Cinematographer Frank Tidy used pre-World War I Cook lenses to desaturate colors into muddy greens and gunmetal blues, matching pigment samples from actual Napoleonic uniforms. Harvey Keitel's sabers are original 1805 carriages, so sharp they sliced 2 stunt gloves clean through. The prop master finally dulled edges with river stones the period way. Scott choreographed sword fights by projecting silent-era duel films on location tents at night, letting actors memorize footwork by flickering oil lamp light. The film won Best Debut at Cannes, but its bigger legacy is visual. Scott's Smoky Horizon shots became the template for advertisers chasing heritage grit. French tourism boards still market Dordogne castles as Ridley's battlefields, proving micro-budget passion can mint mega-scale myth. Days of Heaven, 1978. Terrence Malick chased magic hour like a pilgrim, filming only at dawn and dusk, so 1916 Texas would glow amber. Location? The endless wheat oceans of Alberta, Canada, where he built a full-size steam threshing machine from Smithsonian blueprints. DP Nestor Almendros shot with natural light 85% of the time, rating film stock by holding his palm to the sun, no meters. Costume designer Patricia Norris sourced Edwardian lace from Louisiana rummage sales and soaked each dress in tea for cafes au lait patina. Locust swarm scene. Crew members dropped peanut shells from helicopters while reversing footage, making shells appear to rise into the sky, a low-tech trick that fooled entomologists. The film's soft-spoken grandeur inspired MTV to book Malick for a video, and fashion houses pilfered its prairie palette for 1979 runways. Almendros and Haskell Wexler split the cinematography Oscar, cementing Golden Hour as Hollywood gospel. 1976. Bernardo Bertolucci's epic charts Italian life from 1901 to 1945, and he treated time like an art installation. He leased 4,000 acres of Parma farmland, then altered harvest schedules so wheat, corn, and grape rows would age in chronological order across the shooting calendar. Set carpenters studied 1910's Italian tax codes to rebuild tenant houses with the correct roof tile tariffs. Even unseen attic boards comply. Lead actors De Niro and Depardieu attended a month-long dialect camp taught by octogenarian farmers to nail 3 generations of accent drift. 2,000 extras were costumed with authentic, lice-resistant hemp spun in Emilia-Romagna mills dormant since World War II. Clocking in at 317 minutes, the film forced theaters to schedule intermissions like operas. Italian cinemas sold risotto cups instead of popcorn to stay on theme. Its socialist undercurrent fueled university debates for years, but historians still screen it for architecture students studying rural vernacular. Grease, 1978. Randall Kleiser's musical time-warped post-war suburbia into a Technicolor daydream. Production rented L9, 56 to 59 Chevys and Mercurys from collectors, then repainted them in factory shades using original DuPont lacquer formulas, harder to apply, but crucial for that wet-look gleam under California sun. Wardrobe head Albert Wolski scoured dead-stock warehouses for circle skirts with felt appliques still sealed in plastic. Vacuum seal was carefully slid on camera to capture authentic creases. The school carnival set featured a real 1957 Rocco plane Ferris wheel, refitted with hand-carved bulbs after Kleiser complained new LEDs killed the romance. Even the diner milkshakes used a 1950s ice cream fat ratio because modern brands melted too fast beneath tungsten stage lamps. The soundtrack's explosion pushed vinyl sales past 8-track for the first time since 1974, and teenage enrollment in swing dance classes tripled nationwide. Fans still flock to Venice High, recreating the final handshake line. The school now hosts an annual Grease Day, proof that slick hair and saddle shoes never truly fade. Cabaret, 1772. Bob Fosse's razor-edged musical pins you to a bar stool inside the Kit Kat Club and refuses to let modern life intrude. Production designer Rolf Zehetbauer stripped a real 1920s Berlin dance hall to its brick skeleton, hand-painting decadent murals in Art Nouveau swirls copied from surviving nightclub matchbooks. Every bulb in the footlights burns at 40 watts, the same wattage used before German Electric standardized post-1930, giving Liza Minnelli's sequins that sweaty, flicker, and fuse glow. Makeup artists researched pre-waterproof mascara formulas so tears smudged authentically during the Maybe This Time breakdowns. Even the band's battered trumpets are period German Selmers, mouthpieces pitted by a half-century of real jazz breath. Cabaret scooped 8 Oscars, rebooted interest in Kurt Weill, and inspired a global revival of 1920s jazz clubs. Berlin's tourism board credits the film for a 40% spike in Kit Kat-style cabaret bars by 1975. Guidebooks literally adopted Fosse's color palette for their covers. Most telling, historians cite cabaret, not textbooks, as the reason millennials grasped the creeping dread of pre-Nazi Berlin, proof that perfect set dressing can teach history better than lectures. Fiddler on the Roof, 1971. Director Norman Jewison went hunting for 1905 Anatevka and found it in rural Croatia. He built a full wooden village from 600-year-old reclaimed oak so that every door creaked with the right century's pitch. Costume maestro Patricia Norris scoured Odessa flea markets for authentic pogrom-era prayer shawls, then hand-dyed extras coats in onion skin baths for flea-bitten realism. The showstopper tradition sequence used live geese and pigs to match the 1905 livestock census of Imperial Russia. Cameraman Oswald Morris slipped a silk stocking over the lens to bathe frames in sepia, simulating faded family photographs you'd find in a steamer trunk. The soundtrack shattered UK charts, while the film's success convinced U.S. synagogues to launch a nationwide Yiddish language preservation drive. Master carpenters reported a run on wooden wagon wheels, now prized by collectors as Jewison wheels. And Topol's battered milk cart? It tours museums as a roving artifact of cultural memory. Patton, 1970. Franklin J. Schaffner's biopic fires the opening salvo with that giant American flag, stitched to 1944 Army regulations, right down to the exact Pantone shade of Old Glory red. The Spanish Army loaned 900 Sherman and Panzer lookalikes, repainting each in division-correct camouflage gleaned from Allied reconnaissance photos. George C. Scott's ivory-handled revolvers? Real Colts borrowed from the Patton Museum, shipped in climate-controlled cases. Battle scenes unfold at 70 millimeters on Todd AO film stock, letting audiences read treadmarks in North African sand. Prop maps were printed on rice paper so they'd crinkle with period brittleness when Scott slapped them in fury. Winning 7 Oscars, the movie rebooted Patton's public image so completely that West Point added film clips to leadership classes. Surplus stores sold out of tanker goggles, and the U.S. Army saw a curious blip in Armored Division enlistments, nicknamed the Patton Bump. Evidence again that meticulous military detailing can march a legend straight into modern pop culture. Nicholas and Alexandra, 1971. Producer Sam Spiegel shipped 2 tons of Fabergé-style glass beads to recreate the Winter Palace ballroom. He leased England's Royal Naval College, then spent £1 million draping it in crimson damask woven on 1890 looms. Wardrobe wizard Yvonne Blake replicated Romanov uniforms using archival dye recipes, cadmium blues illegal today, so chemists substituted lapis lazuli dust for that same ultraviolet pop. Director Franklin Schaffner hired a Russian Orthodox choir to sing live on set during coronation scenes, capturing hymns in analog echo. Even the doomed imperial children wear exact replicas of 1904 sailor suits. Patches were stitched by nuns in St. Petersburg who still hold the original patterns. Though the film's box office stumbled, Sotheby's saw Romanov memorabilia prices triple overnight. Tourism to Tsarskoye Selo surged so sharply that Soviet officials cited the movie, banned domestically, as foreign propaganda of nostalgia. Oscar wins for costume and production design enshrined Blake's work as textbook excellence in historical tailoring. 1958 Twilight, acting Oscar for portraying the same character. After release, Italian barbers reported spikes in Vito-style mustache requests. Meanwhile, Cuban exile groups praised its eerily precise Tropicana set, insisting even the tablecloth lace matched 1958 imports. Hollywood finally grasped a credo prestige TV still follows. Tess, 1979, Hardy's Wessex Lit by Real Dawn. Roman Polanski escaped urban chaos to Dorset and Brittany, vowing to capture Thomas Hardy's 1870s countryside in virginal light. He refused modern fertilizers on the wheat fields, so stalks leaned with 19th-century irregularity. D.P. Jeffrey Unsworth shot using natural dawn and dusk almost exclusively. Crews slept at noon, waking to chase first light that lasts 10 magical minutes. Costume genius Anthony Powell wove peasant smocks from flax grown in Poland, then smudged seams with charcoal dust to imitate years of stove ash. Nastasia Kinski's straw hat was braided by a 92-year-old artisan whose grandfather sold hats at Dorchester Market in 1880. Sound mixers captured gulls on location, so distant cries matched the toll puddle horizon seen on screen. Winning 3 Oscars, Tess sparked a scholarly rush. Hardy sales leaped 600% in 1980, and British tourism boards coined the phrase "Tess Trails" for walking tours. Vogue shoots copied its earthy palette for years, and candlelit interiors repopularized low-key lighting in art house cinema. When viewers swear they can smell damp soil through the screen, you know period detail has crossed into alchemy. So there you have it, 17 cinematic time machines from the 1970s that rebuilt everything from Romanov palaces to jazz-soaked Berlin cellars, proving obsession is the secret engine of immortality. If one frame made you inhale and taste the past, imagine what modern filmmakers could do by following these blueprints. Drop your favorite film or the detail that stunned you most in the comments. Let's see which tableau wins our unofficial, most immersive crown. And before you time travel to the next video, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another deep dive into Hollywood's hidden craft.